Welcome to another episode of A Moment of Tiki, coming to you from the Lagoon of Mystery, my home tiki bar here in Central Texas. Today, I want to talk about one element of decor that is pretty much synonymous with tiki, and that is black velvet. Black velvet can be considered kitschy. You have your Velvet Elvis. In Mexico, there's the Tijuana artist who slapped paint on velvet very quickly to sell for tourists and everything. But before that, black velvet was an innovative, novel format for artists to work on, dating back to the Renaissance era. The guy who popularized and really established black velvet painting as a staple of South Pacific art, which found its way into tiki bars and Polynesian restaurants and Chinese restaurants worldwide, was a guy named Edgar Leeteg. And so today, I'm going to do a rare book review on Leeteg, Babes, Bars, Beaches, and Black Velvet Art, written by C.J. Cook with Michael Ashley. This is the most definitive biography of Leeteg that's ever been published. I mean, bar none. There have been a couple of books written. James Michener mentioned Leeteg in some of his work, but this is a lush, massive book full of photography and art, more than 250 pages. It's just sprawling, and I want to give you my take on this right now. It's a gorgeous coffee table book. When you have guests over to your tiki space and in between cocktails and conversation, you always want to have some type of reading material on the tables for them to flip through and look through, some good eye candy. And this is a fantastic book to fill that role. Now, I want to give you a little rundown on who Leeteg was. He was born in 1904 in East St. Louis. His mother's name was Bertha. His father's name was Albert. Both of them had immigrated from what's now known as Germany. Edgar's dad, Albert, was a butcher, and he died in 1916 when Leeteg was 12 years old. Leeteg didn't like working in a butcher shop. His mom worked in a shoe factory. He didn't really like working there. By the time he graduated high school, he had developed an interest in art. He took, the family moved, he and his mother moved around to different relatives to survive following his father's death. And so they moved near an uncle in Little Rock, Arkansas. When he graduated high school, he took night classes in art in Little Rock. So this would have been his first formal art training. He ended up getting kicked out of art school for hitting on the teacher, apparently an attractive woman who was teaching, probably about 15 years his senior. That didn't stop him any, because one thing you'll learn about Leeteg reading this is that he was a womanizer in every sense of the word. If someone was wearing a skirt, he would be chasing after them. He was also an alcoholic. He liked anything more than chasing women. It was swilling booze. Didn't really matter what kind it was, as long as it was alcoholic, he would be drinking it. And whenever he was drunk, he'd get into fights. So he was a notorious barroom brawler. He would fight anyone at the drop of a hat. After taking his community college classes, it turned out he had a real aptitude for art. So he got a job as a sign painter in Little Rock, just in time. Well, not just in time. He got a job as a sign painter in Little Rock and became successful enough at that he was offered a job in California for another signage company. And, this isn't just, painting letters. He would, do illustrations as well. So you can tell he had the foundations for a career as a visual artist. Once he got to California, he started taking art classes again and earned his associate's degree from Sacramento Junior College in 1927. He was a full-time sign painter just as the Great Depression hit. Fortunately, his company was large enough and successful enough, and he was a fast enough painter where he maintained his job. He wasn't in the soup kitchen lines or anything like that. And this is where fate intervened. The company, to keep morale high, offered prizes for their most productive workers, and Leeteg won one of these prizes, which was a 6 weeks vacation to Tahiti in the South Pacific. Leeteg went there, nearly broke, but managed to scrounge his way around the islands and absolutely fell in love. Afterwards, he came back, worked for a while, but was determined to return. So in the ensuing years, he bounced back and forth between California, Hawaii, and Tahiti, developing his art. And this is where he really started working on black velvet. He got the idea studying the Dutch masters, Rembrandt, how they had a really dramatic use of light in their images and the paintings that they painted. And Leeteg saw some black velvet paintings and realized that the ones he saw in person, the artist had just put heavy globs of paint on the velvet, which over the years, because remember, this is Renaissance era we're talking about, the paint had cracked and flecked, and it looked great from a distance, very dramatic tonal contrast because of the black underlayment of the painting. But the paint had cracked, and up close it really looked terrible and didn't hold up well. So Leeteg came up with the idea of adding multiple very thin layers to build up so you maintain the texture of the velvet, which came through the final painting, but you never had the caking up of the paint as big, heavy globs on there. And that was really his innovation. While in Tahiti, he continued his drinking and his womanizing ways, and his mother came to live with him. Bertha was a stern and disapproving woman, but she put up with his womanizing. She put up with his drinking, with his brawling, and he took care of his mother. It was a really kind of strange symbiotic relationship. I wonder if it might be considered codependent nowadays, because these two personalities should not really work together, yet they were almost inseparable. Leeteg was struggling throughout the Great Depression, but as time progressed towards the end of the Great Depression, the beginning of World War II, he got a patron, a wealthy visitor from Salt Lake City, saw his paintings, were amazed by them, and offered to buy all of them. And so annually he would buy a certain number, guaranteeing Leeteg a steady income, and it was off to the races. Now, I'm not going to go through Leeteg's entire biography because that would do a disservice to Cook's book right here. But throughout World War II, Leeteg sells velvet paintings to GIs stationed in Tahiti. He ends up selling paintings, black velvet paintings, to Trader Vic's in 1944. And here's an interesting intersection of history. The couple from Tahiti who was in Trader Vic's in 1944 and named the Mai Tai, well, they were acquainted with Leeteg on Tahiti. So it's all these interconnected, tiki threads. They're all entwined together. Leeteg was certainly and arguably an innovator, and certainly took his art seriously. He led a artist rebellion in Honolulu at one point, where the Artist League had a high-profile art show, yet the judges only selected their own prints for display in the art show, and then went and awarded their paintings the top prizes, thereby blocking Leeteg and other artists in the community out of the lucrative prize money and the sales that would ensue from it. So, you know, the guy was always spoiling for a fight, whether it was justified or not. His profile grew and grew. He went from selling black velvet paintings for, you know, $10 a piece to hundreds or even thousands of dollars a piece. So he took his art seriously, but not all the time, not as seriously as he pretended, perhaps. One of his failings was that he was an unapologetic plagiarist. Some of his most famous paintings were based on the photography work of other artists, and he would copy it and then claim it for his own on black velvet. And this isn't to say that Leeteg was not capable of creating his own original subject matter or taking photographs to work from, because he did this multiple times, and some of his really good work was done that. But if he was in a bind or pressed for time, you know, he would just copy someone's photograph that he saw in Life magazine or something else, and, you know, here you go. At certain times, he was so invested in partying and drinking and womanizing that he had to rush to keep up his quota for his agents who were selling his work. And sometimes he got really sloppy, and more than one occasion, his agents and his buyers returned the black velvet painting because, you know, they were a mess. It was very clear that he did not put his full effort, his full artistic capability into it. So he was a fascinating man, a lot of contradictions, inarguably talented, but someone who abused his talent, arguably abused women, maybe not physically, but you know, towards the end of his life, he had syphilis. He had contracted syphilis and was still chasing after women without having that treated. He had many problematic behaviors, but, you know, his art stands as a legacy. Ultimately, Leeteg died February 7th, 1953, on a drunken motorcycle ride home. He had been drinking at Quinn's Bar, which was the main bar there in Tahiti, got on the back of a motorcycle with a friend, and both had been drinking. Both were driving too fast through the rainforest of Tahiti and missed a turn and plowed into a tree. And that was the end of Edgar Lugar. Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you see, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. If you really like what you've been seeing here at A Moment of Tiki, please leave a comment or maybe even share the video to your feeds. What this does is make it easier for others to find A Moment of Tiki. And if you do that, I will be grateful. Mahalo. And if that's not enough, C.J. Cook, solo this time, has produced a follow-up volume, which is just as lush, just as detailed, just as rich and engrossing as the first one, on Ralph Burke Tyrie, who, for my money, was probably the best black velvet painter of the 20th century. In many ways, Tyrie was the polar opposite of Leeteg. He was a family man. He married his high school sweetheart. They had 5 children. He was in the Marine Corps. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here. Let me give you a quick rundown on his background and biography. Okay, Tyree was born in 1921 in Irvine, Kentucky, to a tobacco farmer, his father. The next year, one of his older brothers died in an accident on the farm, so the family moved to California, where they opened a small grocery store. Tyree grew up in a California lifestyle this time, having adventures with his friends, but he showed artistry at a young age, did illustrations, sketches throughout high school. He was very athletic. He lettered in football and track, so he was robust, kind of, captain of the football team material. Okay, that stereotypical kind of athletic Southern California strapping young lad. He met his future wife, Margot, there. Before he graduated high school, he tried to stow away on a Matson freighter to the South Pacific. They caught him and threw him off before they left the harbor. After he graduated, he did hook up with a Greek freighter, which wasn't glamorous. He shoveled coal the entire trip, but he did get to Japan, where he experienced Tokyo, which was exciting and exotic. So Tyree had a thirst for adventure. When he returned to California, he took several years of art school, transferring to different colleges wherever he could get scholarships. And afterwards, he started working in advertising, signage, things like that. For a while, he was even in the advertising department for Disney Studios. So, that's pretty cool. See, I got notes, folks. I made effort for y'all. Then World War II broke out. Okay, Tyree enlisted in the Marines, where he did really well. He really enjoyed it. He was athletic, so he fit in with the physical demands. He was stationed in the Pacific in American Samoa, one of the few island groups that Japan hadn't conquered, where his artistic ability got him transferred to headquarters, where his sketching ability and art, he was sent on reconnaissance flights to sketch out island maps, so they could get concentrations of troops, shorelines, coastlines, all that intelligence that was needed for the planning of invasions or operations or logistics or any of those kind of things. Not limited just to map making. He also started painting murals in the mess halls of, the Wahinis, Hawaiian and Tahitian and Guam, and he would do pinups and all this kind of stuff. He had his own informal studio set up where he would do paintings, and he became very popular and produced a lot of paintings in a short amount of time, really developing his skill set. He eventually became known as General Charles Price's personal portrait painter in World War II. It is also interesting to know that James Michener, the famous author, was also stationed in American Samoa at this same time, and he would go on to write South Pacific, Tales of the South Pacific, and Rascals in Paradise. He met Edgar Leeteg earlier in his career, but it's not known if he and Tyrie ever crossed paths. That would be interesting to find out. After the war, he returned to California, married his high school sweetheart, Margot, and they started a family right away. He had 4 boys and a daughter. He had a variety of different jobs, but in 1952, he kind of got his dream job, and the whole family went to Guam, where he was employed as a mapper. He would draw maps. This lasted for a while. Then when the contract ended, they went to Hawaii for a while, and then ended up back in California. Now, while Tyree and his family were in the South Pacific in Hawaii and Guam, he had his own art studio set up, and he would paint the women. Now, Margot, his wife, knew he was an artist and really recognized his talent and encouraged and helped him. She was almost his business manager, seems like. And he painted many of the beautiful natives. Unlike Leeteg, Tyrie really focused on professionalism. There's not really any reports of or credible sources saying that he was bedding all of his models. Like Leeteg used the fact that he was painting these women in the nude as a precursor to sleeping with them. Tyree, by all accounts, was much more professional than that. His wife was heavily involved with his artistic career. Basically kept the kids from bothering him while he was working in his studio. And he was also an accomplished photographer. So he would take his reference photos and was not accused of plagiarizing other artists' work like Leeteg was. In 1960, Tyree's work wasn't selling. At this point, he was painting oil on board. I guess the modern equivalent would be masonite. And so he had already seen Leeteg's black velvets and had been impressed with them. Probably seen other black velvets, and those were in demand in the booming Polynesian restaurant scene in the United States. So really kind of fascinated by the dramatic contrast, the super dark blacks and the pop of color and contrast that this would create. 1960, Tyree started experimenting with black velvet. Within a year, it was his exclusive medium. He was painting everything, and he wasn't just painting women or men or Polynesian natives and everything. He got into painting wildlife and endangered species and landscapes and flora and fauna and everything. He was an artist with a massive appetite for subject matter. And I'll let you read the rest yourself in this book. I'm not going to spoil anything, but just looking at the man's artistic output, his technical control is just so astonishing. I mean, his vision is so precise, almost lifelike in many cases. That it doesn't seem like there's any rush to it. He works on a piece until it's perfect, and then he moves on to another. Now, I know the whole artistic thing, there is no piece of art that is ever finished, only abandoned. But Tyree seems to have had this singular vision where he knows what he wants to accomplish in his work, and he reaches that. It's just, his technical proficiency is just so amazing. Leeteg was the trailblazer, but Tyree, I think, absolutely perfected the art form. It's the use of color and the use of contrast just comes together so sublimely here. I mean, even just look at this. With the hibiscus in the hair and the contrast of the skin tones, the cover art right here is magnificent. If I could have any actual black velvet painting by either of these men, I would just take anything by Tyree. Now, that's not to diminish Leeteg, who is a fantastic artist in his own right, far greater than I could ever hope to aspire to. But I just feel that Tyree took his art more seriously. Now, Leeteg would come and beat the crap out of me for even suggesting that, but this man was a serious artist. He took his professionalism seriously. His wife and family also were all in on it. This man didn't have any distractions. He didn't have partying, boozing, brawling, womanizing ways to divert him from focusing all of his talent into his art. So, I know some of you folks are going to be happily commenting down below saying, too much talk, too boring, too long, didn't read, any of that. But, these books kind of made a splash when they came out a few years ago, but I haven't seen much about them. And I know a lot of people who are coming to Tiki through my videos may not have heard of these books or these artists. And I think that's a shame. This is just really an important aspect of Tiki art. Some of the foundational artists that many of today's modern artists draw inspiration from. And these books, they are actually self-published by C.J. Cook. You wouldn't know it by the layout and design and style. They're professional through and through. They can be ordered through South Pacific Dreams Publishing, or you can get it on Amazon. I recommend ordering through South Pacific Dreams because you can get them autographed at no extra charge. And more of the funds, more of the money goes directly to the artist. And I know from my experience in publishing that a labor of love like this is no small feat. This took a tremendous amount of work, and there's really very little money in publishing. You're doing it for the love of the game. And I have to salute C.J. Cook because he saw some stories, some history of Tiki that was not getting its fair due, and he decided to rectify that. And he talked to families, he did insane amounts of research, and the end result are two gorgeous, lush, and eminently revisitable books that have so much beauty and art in them. It's just fantastic to go back to them time and time and time again. And if you add these to your Tiki Bar library, I'm sure your guests will wholeheartedly agree. Getting an actual painting by either Leeteg or Tyrie is probably far outside the price range of any of us mere mortals these days. So these books are absolutely the next best thing to it. So until next time, from the Lagoon of Mystery, aloha.
Well, if you ever feel lonely and you haven't got a friend, you feel downhearted, and that's your ropes in to get yourself together and head for a place I know. It's a little German town with a Spanish name, and once you go there, you never be the same, and it's a whole lot cleaner and safer than Mexico. Well, it's 90 miles from Houston, 120 from San Antonio, and once you hit the city limit, you don't have to be alone. Every tavern salesman that's on the road, every trucker that's scared and overload knows a boom in a little Burke they call a grain. If your ever loving woman won't treat you right, and your nights get longer and your pants get tight, then get yourself moving and get ready for a So if you got a little money and you feel uptight, go to LaGrange and they'll treat you right. Just stop at the filling station, give them half a chance. And they'll give you directions to a little retreat with the great air government inspected meat. And they'll send you to the famous chicken ranch. Well, it's 90 miles from Houston, 120 from San Antonio. And once you hit the city limits, you don't have to be alone. Every traveling salesman that's on the road, every trucker that's carrying overloads, knows a boom in a little Burke they call grain. Every traveling salesman that's on the road, every trucker that's carrying overloads, knows a boom in a little Burke they call grain. Thank you.
Honey, that is a little country place out there. The people's tried to make it into something that it wasn't. It's just a little country horse, what it amounted to.